welcome. We are back. We have Aron with us, who is the founder of Laguna Games. Welcome, and you're also the founder of Crypto Unicorns, which is going to be the main staple we're talking about today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Dave. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. I'm really excited for this for a couple of reasons. Not the least that this is actually um, my first play to earn NFT game that I've covered in any capacity since I started as Dave vs. Axie about a year ago. Um, and I'll also say, if you're here, I do want to preface a couple things. Obviously, this is Aron's baby and his project, so he's going to talk very highly about it. I have some investments in it too. I own like 5 or 6 land plots. I have 2 regular unicorns, and I have 1 mythic unicorn. I did not mint them. I bought them off secondary, so I'm a couple of ETH invested. So I hope that this is a very positive outlook as well on the conversation. But I do want to state that too, and this is not a paid interview or a shill on crypto unicorns either. And again, I think that this is also for me and my content, kind of the first change in foray into other games. I've talked about other games a lot on Twitter and such, but never done a full kind of AMA through Twitch streams and post on YouTube. So super excited. And I know we haven't chatted too much, but I'll let you kind of kick it off. I'll just basic overview. You've done a lot of stuff recently. You did a great Delphi podcast. You did a nice Twitter space with Bryson on becoming the impossible. For me, my space here, I really try to get in the weeds of things and help people that maybe want to invest or spend thousands of dollars into the space feel a little more comfortable with that. And so I'm not gonna do a ton of surface stuff. I will pin some of those in the YouTube link too, because again, those guys do great work, both Delphi and Bryce. And so we'll have some redundancy, but for the most part, this should be either new or even more in-depth information. So real quick from your side, Aron, why don't you just go through like what is Crypto Unicorns at base level and where is the project at kind of right now?
Yeah, sounds great, Dave. I guess the quick summary is Crypto Unicorns is an NFT game or a game that leverages NFTs. The 2 primary being these awesome unicorns, which start as eggs, hatch into babies, can be evolved into adults. And then we also have the land plot NFTs. And when you take unicorns, you put them on the land that you own. You're able to make that land more productive, more efficient. So you can grow more berries, you can craft materials and items in the workshop to progress your land further, upgrade your buildings, things of that nature, as well as breeding and evolutionary boosters. So unicorns do a lot of things around the farm. Very, very helpful, very useful creatures. And then the but wait, there's more part is the battle loops. So in addition to the whole farm sim land gameplay, you can also take your unicorns off the farm to do fun things. So we've announced 3 battle loops, which we'll be releasing over the course of this year. The first is jousting, the second is racing, and the final is a team RPG, a 5v5 team RPG game. So that's kind of the basics of what makes Crypto Unicorns pretty cool.
Great. And so we're gonna I encourage everybody. I will actually I am going to pin or put the link in the chat. So that's the white paper that they just updated, and so this is kind of, you calling it Whitepaper V2. If you want to follow along, there's we're gonna go kind of from the top to the bottom, and I'm gonna try to ask questions that I thought would be helpful for myself and helpful for the rest of the community to make really informed decisions. And so to start, I think the first thing that's coming up on your roadmap is was listed as a public land sale starting on 2/28. I don't know if that date has moved, and so is that still the date that we're targeting? And do you have any more information around kind of the public land sale?
Are you referring to the public token sale? Our last land sale was February 2nd.
Then that is, maybe I am talking about the token sale. I had that at the top as one of the first things I just read in the roadmap.
Yeah, we just
Oh, it just says
completed
public
our
sale.
last one.
I take that back. Yes, it just says public sale, not public land
I
sale.
was
So I
like,
have
oh
heard there,
shit, we've
yes.
got another land sale?
No. So
Um,
that just says public sale. So that is, I'm assuming, then the RBW drop, which we'll talk about in a little bit, right?
correct.
Okay,
Yep.
so
Correct.
let's not jump into there because we're going to probably
Yeah.
start more on the land side. So let's talk about March. Where it says it's listed as game launch. It sounds like it's going to be kind of an MVP. it's in specifically in the updates on V2. And just so you guys know, if you're new here, how new V2 is, all the updates are like 10 or 11 days old. So this is
Yeah.
pretty fresh information. You mentioned farming, crafting, breeding, evolutions, and RBW. What are we expecting to see kind of in that launch?
Yeah, so it's going to be the entirety of the farm core loop, the farming core loop. So that will include being able to plant seeds, harvest berries, craft materials and items like breeding and evolutionary boosters in the workshop, as well as breed and evolve unicorns in the nursery. And then the RBW component is the Rainbow Token Marketplace will also be available. And that's where you'll effectively buy and sell bundles of berries or crafted items or boosters into this kind of peer to peer market. So all of that is launching at the end of March and represents effectively the core loop of the game. So you get a huge chunk of land gameplay to kind of kick things off, and then the plan is to effectively layer in the additional battle loops over the course of the year.
Okay, and you had a picture in there on one of the pages. I don't know if you're looking at the Twitch, but I have our images with that picture where it kind of looked like the unicorns on the grassland with like the workshop and the nursery, and also the neighborhoods kind of in the corner. I don't know if you know what pictures I'm referring to. Is
Yeah.
that what we're expecting in March, or is that like a couple months away?
The picture on the left, you should expect in March. Neighborhoods will not launch until sometime in Q2. So we're going to layer neighborhoods with the kind of Q2 jousting release. So initially, you will be able to see up to 9 of your own plots in kind of this like world map view, if you will. And then you can click and individually transition and view your plots up nice and close, right? And there's going to be some demo footage, I think, dropping a little bit later this month that's going to get people,
Let's
I think, pretty
go.
excited. I'm very happy with the progress the team has made, and it's really coming together and looking nice.
Yeah,
So
I didn't realize that was like March. I was thinking like these are kind of just visual leaks coming in like June or July or Q4. Like if this is coming in March, that looks great.
well,
If we're
thank you,
gonna have
Dave.
unicorns roaming around on our lands and exploring. Let's talk about the image a little bit because
Mhm.
there's some things there that I think are semi leaky. I don't really know. It's kind of hard to say because you don't really know. Um, but you kind of have in the left there like the level, and it talks about the buildings and the unicorns like out of 7. Is that all tied to level? Is that tied to rarity? Does it matter if I have a common or a mythic for how many buildings I can have or how many unicorns I can have at each level? Do you have any information on that at this time?
Yeah, so land level occurs as you upgrade buildings. So it's kind of a summation of the level of all the buildings that you have on land. And if you're reading through kind of airlocking and in and out NFTs, is kind of how we're going to manage the upgrade of NFTs as you progress them. So you might airlock a brand new plot of land, which would be level 1, right? And then spend 6 months grinding on it. And by the time you airlock it out, it's level 6 with buildings of various levels and things like that. So the number of buildings that you can have on a single land NFT is gated by its level. So progressing that will allow you to add more buildings over time, more farm plots over time. If you have multiple land plots, you can make choices where, like, I'm not going to put down a nursery on this one because I'm going to run everything through a nursery on another plot and get that additional farm plot down on the ground for more berry production, depending on kind of which direction you want to go. So the number of buildings you can place is gated by level. The level of your stable building is what gates the number of unicorns you can utilize on an individual land plot. You mentioned rare and mythic plots. Those are really special more so in their ability to both buff more classes than just one class with common land, and the adjacency bonuses get a lot easier to kind of mix and match. And so that's really the initial value in mythic and rare land, is kind of being able to more quickly hit productive bonuses across 3 to all 9 classes.
Do you So I'm really happy to hear that, because that just makes each land, like, it's all the same land. It's just that you're going to be able to farm the boosters, and kind of make the berry farming more effective or efficient, I
Correct.
guess is probably the right way to say it. And you don't actually have to own better land just to get a high stable or do those things, which is really smart.
Hmm.
Initially in March, do you need to have land and unicorns to do these things? To like, well, obviously, I guess, yeah, that's the question. Like, what if in March, what can you do if you have nothing? What can you do if you have unicorns? What can you do if you have just land, or what can you do if you have both?
You, at the very least, are going to want some land. If you just have unicorns right now, until the battle loops launch, there's really not anything to do with a unicorn until Dark Forest Act 2 comes out, I should say.
Oh, Act Two, let's
Um,
go.
yeah, but don't get too excited. That one's gonna take a little bit.
Okay, fair.
Um, but initially, if you just have land and you don't have unicorns, which is more so the situation, a lot of people got in a little later and did not get a corn. You'll be able to plant seeds and harvest berries. And so you can like kind of kick off the initial bit of the farm loop, but you can't craft and obviously you can't breed without having unicorns. So very quickly you're going to want to be watching OpenSea or have some friends that are willing to trade you some Gen 1 corns that are kind of coming off that initial breeding effort.
And to clarify, everybody, Gen 1 will be the first breeding from the Genesis or Gen 0 unicorns that
Correct.
already exist. Of
Yeah,
the 10,000, they will be able to breed as long as they have the unicorns and the land.
correct.
Okay,
Yes, exactly.
perfect.
Yeah.
And something else that you mentioned earlier, that if you're watching right now live or on YouTube, you mentioned airlocking. And
Mhm.
in the depth of reading you, we are going to talk about, you had two tabs on tech, which I do want to nerd out and talk about that a little bit,
For sure.
because I think people hear airlock, and if you didn't read the white paper in depth, you might not know what that really means. And I still have some clarifying questions I definitely want to dive into. So we'll talk about that kind of in a little bit. And so with that plot upgrading, do you just get to choose, like, is it all or one, or can you target things? Like, can I just target the nursery that I want to get that to like level 10 fast? Or, and like, maybe I don't really care about farming berries for some reason, or is it kind of like everything levels together?
We don't have, I guess you would almost call that like a nested leveling tree or something. We're not doing that so much. And so you are going to be able to kind of focus on the if you really just want to get your nursery kind of maximally upgraded, you can focus in on that. I think in some ways you're probably going to want to optimize or maximize the workshop to get as many crafting slots as possible, because that'll just increase your ability to produce materials and items quickly, which kind of helps level everything up. So I
Okay.
think generally you're going to probably want the workshop upgrades in first. And then from there, yeah, if you're like, hey, I just want to get this nursery all the way to level 10, you can absolutely optimize for that. It's not going to necessarily say, oh, you need farm plot level 6 to be able to get like,
Okay.
that we're not going to be doing too much of that. I do think the stable level will gate, you're going to need to upgrade the stable over time, but that's a natural thing you're going to want to do because you need to do that to put more unicorns to productive, to work on the land,
So the
right?
alpha is go for crafting first.
That would be my suggestion.
Okay,
That would be
love it.
my
Hey, that's great to know, because I will admit, for me, crafting in games is not usually the thing I go after. It's like I want to do it eventually, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like, you want to go fight, you want to go do things. And for me, I coming from the Axie universe, I was really into breeding early on, like just
Hmm.
trying to make certain combinations or go for certain things is what I really loved. And one thing I do want to hit, I actually don't have it written down as a question, but as we're talking about that, can you talk about like that crazy rarity mythic that you have like in your roadmap, kind of laid
The
out there?
legendary mythic.
Yeah, like, is that actually going to be possible to make through breeding? Because obviously, I can't imagine that actually coming to reality. Is that just like going to be like a 1 in a million or 1 in 10 million unicorns kind of chance?
Legendary mythics will be very hard to get. I forget exactly in the RNGs as you get to tens of millions of breeds, there will be legendary mythics that are possible, it's going to be very hard, and that is certainly intentional. People with mythics already are going to have kind of the highest chance, and a triple mythic or a quad mythic is certainly going to have a greater chance if you breed it with another triple or kind of quad
Okay, so you
mythic.
got to be. It's like some whale actions there going on. You got.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
that's definitely a portion of the grind that is going to favor the people that, get lucky enough to pull those mythics, or do grab them kind of early on. And of course, you could have two completely non-mythic corns produce a mythic and grind your way up from that, from that side as well. You mentioned being or wanting to be heavy into breeding. I think that's another reinforcement that you're going to want that workshop upgraded quickly, because your breeding and evolutionary boosters, like, that's a really critical system in the game. When you have an egg and you're ready to hatch, you have the option to put that breeding booster on it. When you're looking to evolve a unicorn, you have the option to put an evolutionary booster. And there's tiers of these boosters. And the higher the tier, the higher chance at a higher quality stat roll, right?
Yeah.
And so for those really looking to get into breeding, which of course naturally falls with evolution, like, you're going to want to either have a strategy where you're spending RBW in the store to get those high value breeding boosters, or you want to be the supplier of those breeding boosters. And so again, this idea of kind of like pick a specialization, and really try to lean into that specialization, I think is going to give most players an advantage, unless you're just a super mega whale that wants to do it all.
Yeah. So let's talk about workshops then. Can you leak any of the actual materials? Because I've seen obviously images of like lollipops and honeycombs, and I'm assuming that is actually what's going to be coming out. I don't know that I knew there was material tiers. Like, is that just more RBW, more Unim going into that to get those materials? Is it like combining two common level 1 tier honeycombs makes a level 2 honeycomb? What does that look like? And are they all on chain and tradable?
Most of these items are not on chain. They are soft currencies inside of the game. Over time, we may change that, but for now, we're keeping the vast majority of these materials and items in the game. And they go on chain when you effectively trade them for RBW, right? So because of the Rainbow Token Marketplace at kind of the center of the game economy, it didn't make a lot of sense in our mind, to put everything on chain, right?
Yeah.
And so again, our kind of approach, and the airlock is a part of this, is this hybrid approach, right? We want the players to always custody the assets that they own in the game and make updates to those assets when they want, right? When they've done a breed, when they've done an evolution, and those things were just kind of some design considerations that we made from the beginning. So as far as the different tiers of boosters, both breeding and evolution, yeah, the higher tiers are going to require more materials, could potentially require a lower tier version to get combined, to build them together. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be something that, again, I think will force some players to really specialize in the production of those high value items. And there'll be people that want to do that in house,
Yeah.
themselves, versus those that are just going to potentially trade against the RBW marketplace to get those items quicker.
So I had actually RBW Marketplace I want to talk about later, but since we
Yeah.
brought it up with the workshop, because it's starting to make now more sense, because you talked about having a bonding curve and how it all works
Mhm.
out, which didn't make sense until I think you just said what you just said. So I want to clarify. For the RBW Marketplace, are you, since it's all kind of soft off chain in like software based items, it sounds like you can take those into the marketplace. You're going to get exchange RBW for them that you can then use the RBW however you choose. Does it work the
Exactly.
other way too, that you can then take the RBW, and if I don't have enough honeycombs, I can go buy them on that bonding curve and get them that way? So it's
Exactly.
almost like a dex, but not, but like kind of
Yeah.
is. It's
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not, but it kind of is a perfect descriptor for it. I mean, we kind of felt that people are always watching pricing in this world, like, all the time, whether it's floor price, which I despise, or the price of the tokens or whatever, right? I mean, it's impossible to escape in the space. And I'm such a big fan of economy simulator games like Off-World Trading Co. and stuff on Steam.
Okay.
And in those games, you have this like kind of real-time marketplace, and you're pitting against and playing against other players that, some try to corner certain resources in that market, and you can do things like sell before they do, and it causes a real problem for their strategy and stuff. And so the Rainbow Token Marketplace kind of being, that's why I describe it as like a peer-to-peer marketplace, because for the most part, you are going to be kind of buying and selling against the same pricing curves with all other players. And so, some person, individual, or group that's like dumping cloudberries on the market one day, like, as they're doing that action, the price in RBW will fall, right? And of course, anyone that day that was seeking cloudberries gets a win, right? So, again, it's kind of all about trying to balance things over time. And so I think you're going to see like industrial farming operations probably going after some of the like lower value commodities in the space, the berries and the seeds and things like that. And then I would think there's more specialization and almost craftsmanship required to get the production of the high tier evolutionary boosters and the breeding boosters and that kind of thing, right?
That's very exciting.
I think you'll see like different tiers of players that go after certain things, and this gets crazier as we layer in things like decorators and that whole economy around that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously I've said this before in other podcasts and stuff, we're always trying to think about how we build like a really solid starting foundation that we know we can build a lot of layers on over time, with each layer hopefully adding additional utility, and bringing something that players are going to enjoy, and adds like an additional layer of depth for sure.
Yeah, and so on that bonding curve, is there going to be like a, maybe like, because I'm assuming in the soft side you can see there's 10 million cloud berries out in the world. So we're going to say, okay, if we're going to have like a million kind of fixed around this price in the market per day. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, we'll set the shape of the curve, the slope of the curve, and we'll set kind of the like maximum amount of bundles that can be bought and sold that day. So there's some levers, right? There could be a situation where you just miss out on that day, and that bundle is no longer available in the Rainbow Token Marketplace. And I think we'll start with that and probably make it more sophisticated over time. But yeah, I thought this would be a really interesting experiment. It shifts the play and earn component so that it's not just about Unim, which is kind of our SLP, right? And it does orient it more towards the governance token, the token that is supposed to hold value over time, the token that will allow you to stake it, to vote on governance and to earn further rewards. And I really think that strategy is going to let us keep incentives aligned over the longer term, versus trying to pump all of that through a consumable utility token, a commodity, right? Being unicorn.
And so someone did ask in the chat, I just want to clarify, the Unim is unlimited token supply, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's an infinite mint and burn. And so we will always treat that as, a currency that we need to make sure that supply and the mint and burn is lining up very, very closely with very little delta, so that the amount that is circulating is really just enough to provide liquidity and get people interested, the ability to enter and exit that. But yeah, we plan to maintain a very, very tight control over the supply of Unim. And again, it's one of the reasons we're designing and shifting towards the RBW token being a token that you can earn in the game, both via the farm sim as well as the battle loops.
Perfect tie-in. All right, let's go back to the key, like to the farm. Let's go to everything that we're doing over there. And reading back through the second time, I definitely missed it in the first time I read through the V2 update. Unicorn poop. What happens when you don't pick it up? Is there a penalty? Does my horse get sick? Do I need to buy medicine for it? Like, do my berries die? Do I need to fertilize it and start to grow better berries? Like, what? I couldn't believe that you actually said in there too, it's like a daily habit, you got to clean up your poop. So I had to ask about it.
I don't know. You gave me a lot of great ideas for V2, maybe V3 of unicorn poop. I think off the bat, you simply miss out on your ability to collect it. So that's how it will start, right?
Okay.
Unicorn poop will effectively get cleared if you miss the drop moments. And you don't have to be there active 100% all the time to get those. You can come back after it's happened. But after a certain period of time, it's just going to disappear. I do have this idea of, the Tamagotchi, and you leave it alone for a while and then the entire screen is basically filled up with Tamagotchi poop. Like, that's something from my childhood I remember very distinctly. And so I could see us leaning into that a bit. I really like the idea too of things falling into disrepair and stuff if you're not semi-active. And this could be a really interesting way, like, hey, the poop's seeping into the groundwater and you got a problem here if you're
Yes.
trying to harvest and collect berries and stuff. But for now, the disadvantage of not collecting it timely is just going to be that you missed out on those rewards.
Yeah, I was a big Sims and SimCity guy when those came out back in my
Yeah.
youth. So yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so it's not necessarily a penalty. Is it usable? Like, can we use? Is it something you want to use and collect and do something with?
Yeah, for sure. Right now, it's you effectively, as you clear it, you figure out what's inside of it, right? So it could have things like seeds and occasionally berries pass through. I mean, unicorns have very different digestive systems than humans. Let's just leave it at that, right? So
Wow.
there's probably some valuable stuff in there and a reason to, like, I wanted to create a situation where people would just kind of enjoy keeping a web tab open all day and like checking in a few times every day, right? And you may be more active if you're trying to get a crafting strategy off, or you really want to watch for a certain price in the RBW market, etc. And unicorn poop to me was a very simple feature that's just like, you hear it, if you got your headphones on,
Oh, there's
great. You
sound
go
on
over
it
there
too.
and
That's
boom, like that.
fantastic. Oh my gosh, I
So,
can't wait for the sound. That's what you need to leak like in the Discord next. And maybe you have it, I missed it, but just give me some like unicorn poop sound effects in there, just as a little mini leak.
exactly. I mean, it
Um,
is going to be fantastic. I mean, the whole it's supposed to be just kind of whimsical fun,
but
right?
that's
And I
also, it's
think
not
we've
grindy.
really,
If you're gonna get rewarded with seeds and things that you can use, like,
yeah,
it's useful too, which is brilliant.
yeah, unicorn poop is very, very useful, and very much matches with our kind of theme around just like, what is the most ridiculous thing possible? Let's build that. I think that would be fun, and unicorn poop, I think, is a very good example of us kind of fulfilling that.
Well, I've heard you say that a lot. I think the unicorn poop is definitely the first one that I've seen. Like, all right, that I get it now. Like where you're going with some of these ideas, and I love it. All right, so let's go to the gathering. Is gathering staking, and is it like, or is it like you're actually sending them to a cave, and it's just they come back in a few minutes or an hour, almost like a soft staking? What's that look like?
Yeah, I would consider it a soft stake to start. I view gathering, and we started calling it quests in V2. Like, it's the MVP of effectively a questing feature. So yes, it is as simple as stake a unicorn, soft stake a unicorn. That unicorn disappears and goes off and gathers. Over time, we'll likely do legitimate quests that have certain additional requirements. It may be candy class unicorn to do this quest. It may be a squad of several within a class group to go off and kind of do a quest. And you would have this like rotating list every day, and then you kind of go through the quest tree over time. And so even if you don't necessarily have a unicorn that's right for a certain quest, like after 24 hours it would reset to a new list. And so I think over time we plan to really expand upon what starts as just this very simple kind of gathering cart. And then I have a lot of crazy ideas once neighborhoods becomes a live feature in the game. Because all that really is an MMO map, and then we can start to, I think, do some very fun kind of gathering quests and things like that. I have a lot of ideas too around like running an event where maybe there's a rift opening up between the Shadow Corn world and the Crypto Unicorn world. And you have the option to kind of send your unicorns over to this rift to do fun things. So, anyway, I just make that point to say what starts as a very simple soft stake with the gathering cart, where you come back after time and get rewards, is going to, I think, expand into some really cool stuff over time via our questing system.
That's awesome. And someone just asked in the chat too. I want to ask that too because it's pretty relevant. So I mentioned about like it's not a grind, and you are checking in. Obviously, kind of right now with the staking of shadow corns, if you really want to be on the time, like you set an alarm, you come back the next day, same time to unstake and restake. He was just asking, or she, I don't want to assume. Um, do you feel like you need to check in every minute, day, hour at certain times to have things execute, or is it kind of more like things turn automatically, but you do still need to be checking on it like daily to at least make sure things are still moving forward, or is it kind of a combination of both?
I would say it's a combination of both. I think a few times a day is plenty, right? If you really time things correctly and you know when to come back, right? It's not like the crafting's not going to finish, but when you show up, you collect and you start again, right? And so there are things where, like, when I plant a seed, knowing when to come back to harvest, right, is going to be relatively important because you'll want to replant, immediately afterwards, assuming you have more seeds and stuff. So there will be this appointment mechanic kind of side of things within the game loop itself. I think we're thinking about other game loops, and we do plan to release other game loops that are a little bit more passive, versus the active kind of farming gameplay. But yes, I would expect 2 to 3 times a day checking in on your farm, and you're going to be progressing at a pretty good level. It's certainly not meant to be a 24/7, 365 thing.
That's
I just
good.
don't really believe in trying to build an experience that like sucks every ounce of time that you have. I think we're taking an approach that I think is very familiar to mobile game developers, which is like, hey, when you're building a game that's in everyone's pocket, like you build it around short bits of entertainment and not something that you need to sit down for 15, 30 minutes, even an hour and do and get done. So.
Well, I think as you get to battle loops though, like I like a game where you have that function and it can be like
Yes.
every 4 hours I check in, or I get 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. But I also like the functionality too when I have 2 hours to game and nerd out, like, all right, I
Yes.
can just go and there's no like restrictions. It's just, all right, we go and game for two
Exactly.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of, I think, what's being built here is you kind of get to choose, and we'll have a lot of different, like, if you have 2 hours, great, go play Team RPG, right, for 2 hours straight, just grinding, right? Like that's going to be awesome. And somebody that just has 10 minutes, collects their berries, replants some seeds, and gets back to work, right, on whatever they got to do IRL. So yeah, the goal is to have different battle loops appeal to different player types and just session links and things like that.
Awesome. Any leaks for breeding mechanics and specifically on like caps of breeding, time limits? Is it going to be increasing unum per breed? There's now been a few different kind of evolutions within breeding that have come out in games. I don't think you were willing to give details before. You might not be able to give all the details now either. So if you have anything you want to share, it'd be great. But if not, I totally understand there too.
Yeah. I mean, as we've announced, there's 8 breeding points per unicorn. Unum breeding costs do go up as you sink those breeding points. So the unum costs will increase. Right now, RBW remains static in cost as you scale up the unum cost relative to the amount of breed points left. And then on the evolution side, it's a fixed amount of unum and RBW. And that's at least what we're starting with. Obviously, that will be something that we likely change over time as the game evolves. But it is a pretty good way to like estimate out, the supply and demand for unum, and that's really, really important. So one of the reasons to kind of start with this is it gives us the ability to kind of model out and hopefully know that we can kind of keep things balanced over time.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. So that kind of covers all the March stuff, I think. Let's talk about battle loops.
Okay.
And again, if you guys are in here too, I'm taking the knowledge you've already read everything, and I'm just trying to hit on the questions too. So if you're kind of asking stuff, I'd encourage you to read the white paper. I'll link it in the chat again. So on jousting, all sounds pretty good, pretty straightforward. It reminds me a lot of that movie. I can't remember the name of it, but it's an older movie of jousting, and it's one of my favorite movies. I don't know why I can't remember the name of it right now, but it
Knight's
reminds.
Tale with like Heath Ledger and
Yes,
stuff. Or
yes,
yeah,
yes.
that's a great movie.
And
Very
so I
cool.
love that you have a unicorn knockdown with a 10-second count. I'm imagining a ref to come out, slamming the ground like wrestling style, like you got, or like a boxing match. You got 10 seconds, or you're gonna be knocked out officially. Is there anything that we can do to prevent that, or like once they're knocked out, do we gotta like spam A to get them up, or F's in the chat to get them out of knockdown? Like, what's that look like once you actually
It
do
should
get
have been
knocked
F's
down?
in the chat. That was the right thing to do. For now, no. For now, no. Over time, we're subject to change. But I wanted something that once you'd kind of entered a tournament, you could more passively watch.
Yep.
We plan to run a 24/7 Twitch stream so that people can observe ongoing tournaments kind of live in real time. I think
Oh,
what
that's
will
cool.
be cool, I can't promise it the day the feature ships, but we're looking at like POV camera angles and stuff, so you can kind of swap between them and like really see the angle if you
That's
want
really
to.
smart.
I think a lot of what I'm trying to go for and working with like Bo, our art director and stuff on is just making it kind of a fun event, right? Because you have both the unicorns walk out, go to their positions, do the first run. To your point, yeah, if there's a knockdown, like trying to build the emotion around that with the countdown timer, and is this unicorn going to get up or is this going to be a knockout? And like, I think it will be a very entertaining, but is supposed to be a relatively passive experience for the players
I love
once,
that. By the way, if you
once
ever
they've
do need
stepped
like
into it.
a troll advisor or like a fun idea advisor, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I'll
Definitely.
donate some hours and spit some ideas there. So I like that. Okay. And then you had racing, obviously kind of vague, not a ton of detail was shared, but clearly some kind of racing game. Almost sounds like a Zed Run Peg, actually kind of something in that world like.
Mhm.
But I saw there was the one thing I want to hit on is it says at the start there's gonna be three stadiums, which again is kind of feels like that was the one detailed thing. There's gonna be three stadiums at launch, managed by Laguna Games or Crypto Unicorns, and eventually they want it to be managed by the community. Like, what does
Mhm.
that mean, and what does managed mean? Because I almost picture with all the detail you're putting into picking up unicorn poop, there's gonna be poop on the racetrack. There's gonna be like you gotta rake the sand on the track. So like it's a muddy day and you gotta try to get some of the mud up. Like I don't know like what that looks like, but it was weird that like you gotta manage a digital stadium, and I thought that was quite interesting too, as to what that might look like.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the ideas around that are around effectively placing the ownership of these arenas into NFTs that guilds and players can effectively purchase and own, which would give them a part of the race fee take
Mm-hmm.
as well as the ability to like market it. I kind of want people to, who's the Triple Crown, or like, I'm just going to run an event every 10 minutes,
Penny races.
365, right? And I thought it would be interesting. I mean, a huge part of where I think the DAO goes over time is like the DAO generates revenue by selling NFTs, right? And over time, as we onboard more and more people into this, I think there will be both this idea of, certain NFTs, over time, just like through breeding and things like that, there's more and more unicorns out there, like great. But in certain cases, there will always be very like rare, very high value things. And I think the stadiums are a really interesting way to decentralize ownership of those things, right? And so you could do fractional NFTs and stuff, I think, in really cool ways around that
Yep.
stuff. But the idea there was that I just don't necessarily want to be on the hook to manage all the events across all the stadiums all the time, and to be able to let the community take on some of that work and participate in the upside associated with that. I think it's a fascinating idea. So, we teased it in the white paper. I won't claim that we've got everything figured out on that front. But especially as governance becomes active, you can expect to see a lot of proposals, especially on the form prior to being kind of selected for snapshot voting. I really want to solicit the community and get them involved in figuring out how we kind of structure that stuff over time.
I love that. No, that's it's funny because you kind of think it could just be a one trick pony, no pun intended, honestly. But the beauty of that is like I didn't really think of it being like an actual events board. Like, hey, we have this race. It's a single mythic part only race.
Yes.
Like there is a lot of really cool things you can do there, and
Yeah.
That went over my head.
Art
So
class only,
yeah,
I
really
mean,
cool.
you do the class groups. It really could be a pretty sweet thing. And where we see avenues to allow the community to come in and help structure things, and some races may not get a lot of people interested, right? And so you kind of learn, okay, that's not a race that people want to provide. But if we can like experiment quicker, with the community, I think we can get and allow for the best ideas to surface so that we can kind of incorporate them into everything going forward.
That's awesome. And so and by the way, the next one we're talking about is obviously Battle RPG. Is that the order you're kind of releasing them? It seems like that makes the most sense based on mechanics and like traits and everything. Like you're gonna go
Yeah.
jousting, racing, Battle RPG. Is that pretty much the plan?
That is pretty much the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
The idea of kind of leaning in, starting more RNG with jousting, then going to racing, which does take more skill and selecting against the field as it fills up prior to a race event kicking off, the weather, the terrain.
Yeah.
Our tracks are going to have vertical height and other cool shit that's not trying to be a generic horse racing sim. Nothing against
Yep.
Zed or a Derace or Pegaxi, but just generally trying to be a little bit more ridiculous and on the nose because we got these fucking unicorns and stuff. So I can imagine there actually being kind of a bit of a higher skill curve on that front. And then of course, Team RPG is what we really want to effectively be the esports pillar
I
for
mean, it
the.
looks crazy. So I don't. You can't probably talk about it a lot. If you're in the white paper looking at it right now, you see there's. I mean, there's alone I think like 10 or 12 roles that people can play. Never mind like their skill tree things. It feels almost Diablo-esque where you have all these different roles or WoW that you can tier into, and it's like not even talking about class or
Mhm.
parts you might have there too. I mean, that feels expansive. I'm assuming one you need a freak ton of unicorns to actually you know like fill that out to like have all the different types, and it's 5v5 and all this and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Probably can't add too much detail. If there's anything you do want to share, you're welcome to share it, but again, it feels like that's a maybe even like a year or two out. Is that about right? Or
I mean, we're planning it for Q4. What
okay.
prevents that would just be early play testing of the battle loop that we have planned to design, the mechanics not feeling great. And I think we are planning to like build a council of community members that help us with that decision mid this year. The current plan though is Q4. We had built and paper prototyped a previous battle loop that had a lot of similarities for another IP in our past. And through the paper prototyping, got to a pretty high level of confidence that we had the right combination of like placement on the chessboard mattering, where you place your five pieces relative to the other player's five pieces, plus the composition of the party and the
Yep.
synergies between the composition, the different roles, as you've mentioned. And so that's not just us throwing out a bunch of stuff. It is very much based on a lot of work that we've done previously on a title. And like I said, did some very intricate paper prototypes that were backed up by actual calculations and things, and really thought that, okay, there's actually strategy here and different moves that could be made to counter different strategies. And again, just trying to find something that does have a very high skill curve people can really get into. So the only caveat there is if that turns out not to be true, that would push the feature back for
Okay.
sure.
And are you
But to your
looking?
point, it is the hungriest of the battle loops in terms of new unicorns, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah, like crazy
you're going to need a,
amounts. Um,
yeah, for sure, for sure.
are you looking at that as like an auto battler, or like I play a board game behind me is actually Gloomhaven, where it's like you set up you have your enemies and yourself, and you have like turn based things where it's like you can move a certain amount of spaces, attack, and it's
Yeah.
almost like a strategy board game. Is that which is there a way you can kind of describe it or?
Leaning in kind of that direction.
Okay,
Like the auto
that's
chess
awesome.
genre, I think is a really good version because there's a lot of strategy there. And you're not, it's not Twitch. We're not building a MOBA here. We're
Yep.
not building StarCraft. It doesn't require keystroke twitchy craziness, but the strategy of placement, the strategy between turns, like that kind of stuff is really going to matter. And I think is what we're going for with that battle loop. I think the beauty of this whole thing is, we may find that one of the other ideas that we have ends up being the one that works, right? We've got a lot of really interesting plans for like kind of simplistic dungeon crawlers or those tower games and stuff that I think could be like a lot of fun. And again, I keep telling everybody we're just building this arcade in the metaverse,
No, it's
and there's going to be a lot of games in the arcade. Like I really want there to be over time, and so what we're pitching is really just what Laguna is focused on, and we're looking at onboarding additional developers this year to layer in additional battle loops, as well as potentially more on-chain mini games like Dark Forest.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. All right, so that's kind of like obviously the core part of crypto unicorns. We're
Mhm.
gonna kind of again like bounce on a few different things here, some tokenomics, and we got about 15 minutes left, so I want to respect your time there too. And a couple of just random questions. So first random question: when is the first 1v1 coming out, and how do I acquire it? I like the pause.
I think it will likely come out prior to the launch of the game. As to how to
Just one?
acquire it, this is a limited one of one.
Just one though, not like the thing is 99 you said or 100 total. So you're just gonna do
There
one.
might be a couple that launch. There might be
Oh,
a couple that launch.
crazy.
As to how to acquire them, you're just going to have to keep an eye on community updates in Discord.
Okay.
But it'll likely be via a Discord raffle/event.
Wow. And I liked you just had some really cool if you guys aren't in Discord, I'll try to pin that in the YouTube link as well. Their Discord just had like kind of a cool like click button word. I don't even know how you just like it was almost like a dungeon crawler lore click button adventure thing. I died the first one, so I became a ghost corn immediately. So I kind of was like, all right, well that kind of stinks. Like I guess my journey's over in the shadow corn world, but yeah, like it's just some fun things going on in the Discord for sure.
Yeah, incredible shout out to our wonderful community team who's been working very hard to kind of create these little mini quests. Yeah, I think they're awesome. I hope that they continue, and I think particularly as the game launches, you could start to see NFTs that whether they're future golden tickets or bundles of items and things as prizes and rewards for staying active in Discord. And anyway, I think there's a lot of fun stuff that we can do, and you guys are kind of getting to see the very, very first steps in that direction with this first little mini questing game. Choose your own adventure.
Yes, no, that's great. Post-launch land sale, I love the strategy. Keystones, kind of a cool thing. And the
Mhm.
bonding curve tied to it. Is that just bonding curve tied to market prices too, or like because again the market can kind of run rampant, like, or is it just kind of tied to you're gonna have somehow farm and get this keystone, plus you're gonna have to pay the ETH for whatever land you might want to be buying. Any other any more knowledge on that system or when it might start for the post-launch land sale?
Yeah, it's a top priority feature post the launch of the game. There will be, I think, probably a lot of demand for things like hidden class land and stuff, especially as people breed
I
the
didn't even
hidden
think about that.
classes. Um, and I think that will be pretty cool. I think people are going to be very excited to see the hidden classes. I got to peep a lot of that artwork over the last 2 weeks. It's been incredible to
Oh, that's
see.
right.
As far as the bonding curve is concerned, we are like you produce the keystone item that'll have a bunch of crafting material inputs to get that item. Um, from there, you take it to the land vending machine and you give it the keystone item, you give it the amount of ETH that you need, it plops out a land plot.
Oh
Like,
my
so we're
god,
literally designing
that's
this
so
kind of
cool.
vending machine just for shits. That I think will be a lot of fun. But the bonding curve is meant to be static. And the idea there is market prices can kind of do what they want. And in some ways, it will hopefully help regulate the supply and demand, right? Because at least in my mind, if somebody is on OpenSea sitting on a plot of land that's level one that they're just not touching, right? And there's some, and the market ends up being higher over there, like you might as well craft a keystone item and go to the vending machine, right? Or you make the bet of going on OpenSea and you're like, I want a level 5 plot of land because I'm starting, I want to start with more farm plots, higher capacity in the workshop, right? So I'm going to go and buy that on the secondary. Like that's the loop, right?
That's so
I
good.
don't want to grind, so I'm going to go and do it over here. But we want to disincentivize people just sitting on a mythic plot at level 1 on OpenSea, right? It's like that's not helping anyone. That's not being put to productive use. So a player might go, oh, I'll just craft a mythic keystone and go get a mythic plot for myself out of the vending machine. And so as with everything we're doing, it's an experiment, but I think it's a novel one. And we wanted, the players to almost control the supply, from the perspective of the keystone items and how quickly they craft those. And I would expect the mythic and the rare keystones to be pretty valuable, right? There's,
Yeah, no, I'm gunning for a mythic keystone. Like I need a
for
mythic
sure.
plot.
Exactly. And players that really want to go that route, again, it's another avenue for specialization, right? You may not be producing evolutionary or breeding boosters, but you're willing to produce the keystone items, right?
And would that follow the same soft item that you just go through RBW Marketplace?
That one is TBD. That one might actually be an 1155.
Got it. Awesome.
Yeah, so a little TBD. The thing I want to avoid, we may inevitably have to do it, is to do another like chunk of land prior to us releasing the keystone feature. I really want to avoid that. I'm so tired of whitelist versus not versus blah versus it's a mess any way you slice it. It's too hard to get the CAPTCHA stuff working in a truly trustless way. I know that's been a heavy suggestion from the community. Somebody can point us to an open source library that will do that for us. That's been vetted and battle tested. We'll certainly look at it. But again, I think worst case scenario, we'll probably do another set of hidden class land as a sell that would be direct. But the desire is to get the keystone feature in there for sure.
Sweet. Let's talk about RBW then. So Feb 28 is still the launch date, public sale. I don't think I've ever seen someone say we're going to launch a token and they say we guarantee or we say it won't sell out because of this system that you're using. Is called the Balancer's Bootstrap Liquidity Provider or Liquidity Pool. What does that mean? Like, how does that even work? I'd love to know more.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I initially rejected this as a path because, I wanted to do first come, first serve with a whitelist. And I felt that would be the easiest way to like eliminate bots and all that kind of stuff. The reality is it's impossible to eliminate bots. Bots can very easily get into whitelists. This has happened all the time. It happened very slightly in our last land sell. And so that kind of drove the idea of, well, let's do a 10 million RBW community airdrop as a way to give to community members who've been here as a part of this Genesis crew of people prior to the game launch. So that, being a mechanism by which, now you don't necessarily have to go buy the public sell if you really don't want to. And then, the Balancer's liquidity bootstrap pools as a mechanism, it kind of came out of this idea of like, how do you launch a token in like a fair way when I don't really know what the price is? The price is whatever the market is going to bear, right? And so it allows for that. And part of the reason is it's an AMM, right, that is imbalanced. So we're going to put $1 million in USDC on one side of the pool and 40 million in RBW tokens on the other side of the pool, right? And then over a 3-day period, you can buy and sell as much as you would want against that pool. And all we really do is set a starting price, and kind of like a Dutch auction, just goes down over time. And if you've seen with like GuildFi, Merit Circle, or Avocado Guild, like these other groups that have used the Copper Launch platform, in practice, it ends up looking kind of crazy as it finds the price, right? So you have this price discovery period. The beauty is bots kind of struggle in this environment because if you try and like just buy everything all at once, it spikes the price and becomes very inefficient. So bots usually do not have an advantage over a traditional person just using MetaMask, right? And so that's another advantage. We will be launching a Medium blog post, hopefully next week, that will give a bunch of details and some kind of best practices. And I really suggest anyone that's wanting to participate in the public sell to look at that. Because it's a much more complicated strategy, but it is one that I do believe is much fairer than your traditional first come first serve sales and stuff in the space.
Okay, and is the airdrop only for unicorn holders, for unicorn and land holders? Is it through the full last snapshot of the last land sale? What's that look like?
It will include anyone that is holding NFTs, including unicorns and land. And then there will be these, what we're calling Genesis badges. There'll be a very finite amount of those Genesis badges. Those are going to be doled out to people who've been very, very active within the community kind of since inception. And so anyway, there'll be like tiers based on holding behavior and then the Genesis badges as kind of a second measure. And then we'll do the airdrop against that list. But it is a different structure than the Unim airdrop we just did.
Yep. Will the Genesis badges be NFTs, and will they have future value?
They are going to be NFTs, but I think we're going to make them non-transferable.
Ooh, I don't know. Okay. That's fair. No,
but I really kind of want them to go to the people that, are not going to try and flip those things.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
Generally, if we're handing someone a Genesis badge, they've probably got diamond hands anyway on the hodling behavior. So.
No, that's fair. That makes a lot of sense. All right, let's talk about tech real quick before we run out of time. So you mentioned two things there. You have it called server signing and then NFT airlock. You alluded a little bit to NFT airlock, which it sounds like you can sell upgraded land and maybe upgraded NFTs on OpenSea, which is sweet. But what do those two things mean? What do you want us to know about them, and why are they important?
Let's start with server signing. Server signing is very important in that it's our solution to not writing everything on chain. Like you have two spectrums, fully centralized or fully on chain. And we've seen like fully on chain doesn't work great. Look at Flower Game, right? Or Sunflower Game. Like, wow, that's just not the right way to go about it.
I was in it. It was a wild ride.
Yeah. These chains are, so you're part of the problem now. These chains are not ready for that, right? So we took kind of a middle of the road, what we consider to be a hybrid approach. And so server signing allows us to do really cool things, which is like during a breed, you need a certain number of normal berries if you're just doing a standard run-of-the-mill breed. Normal berries are inside the game logic, right? But you also need Unim and you need RBW. And so if I go and I hit breed, well, what we do is we effectively sign a transaction from our game server, right? Which then tees up into a MetaMask transaction, which you confirm. Because, right, on breeding and evolution, you're like minting a new NFT,
Yep.
right? Or you're evolving a baby to an adult. So it is a blockchain transaction. In that case, when you submit your blockchain transaction via MetaMask, our smart contract looks for the server signed key that says, hey, on the game side, they did have the requisite materials, right? The normal berries that were needed.
Wow.
And so anyone trying to directly go to the smart contract and do a breed without the server signed key is not going to be able to pull that off and like just breed infinitely or whatever. So it gives us the ability to get blockchain logic to know what is like happening inside of the game. I think in a really cool way. And I have to give full credit to Rob, our technical director, for coming up with all this crazy cool stuff.
Are you one of the
but
first
anyway,
games
it's
doing
our
that?
response. Say that again?
Are you the first? Like, I've never heard of anything quite like that. Are you the first game doing that?
To my knowledge,
like live,
we are the first.
You're not like reminting
this,
it. Yeah, you're
strategy.
doing it live, right? So if I go farm 10 berries within a few like seconds, I could then go verify, do that transaction, and breed or whatever. Wow.
Exactly. And the hope is that it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. And again, the things that you own in your wallet never leave your wallet, right? Your unicorns stay in your wallet. You don't have to stake them into a game contract to play the game. And that's great. But we also prevent you from selling an NFT. And this is the airlock functionality. The airlock functionality is a very simple transaction to airlock them into the game. It changes a Boolean on the NFT, which makes it non-transferable when in the airlock. And that avoids like weirdness where I've got a plot of land and somebody, I'm still trying to sell it on OpenSea and somebody buys it. Like what happens there? There's just a number of edge cases that get solved with the airlock system. And it means that when you airlock an NFT in, I may have bought an egg, for example, on the OpenSea market. I airlock it in as an egg. Then, of course, in game, I hatch it, uh, evolve it, and then breed it or whatever, right? And then when I airlock it out, that's when we update the metadata. So it would then be the full adult unicorn that I have with all the parts and all the goodness. And then I'm out on OpenSea or whatever marketplace I prefer, and I go and I trade it and I do all that great stuff. But the airlock was a great way in combination with server signing. Again, full credit to Rob on this. That I think is really novel in this space. And again,
Yeah.
it means players always custody their own assets, and they are the ones controlling the upgrades and the updating process associated with those assets. And I think that is a happy medium between like full immutability, nothing ever changes, where you're like, well, shit, we're a game. Things are supposed to upgrade and evolve and get better, you know? And so the server signing and the airlock were kind of a great combo there that enabled this to work.
No, that's so so okay. So you're clarifying that you still own the assets in your wallet. They're not like staking them, sending them into a contract. They'll still show on your OpenSea as an egg while you're playing with them in game and everything.
That's correct. I think
Okay.
the only con to that is unless you airlock them out, you don't see all the updates until you do that,
Sure.
right? So you can't see those changes on OpenSea until you're ready to airlock them out. But our whole point is if you're playing the game, that's where you see your assets, right? And then when you airlock them out because you want to trade them or do whatever, you have the option to do that. And at that point, everything is up to date with the latest and greatest.
Okay, last 3 quick questions. One's from the community.
Mhm.
Can you breed any unicorns together, or is it like no siblings, no parents to kids? Is any incest allowed?
Right now, any unicorns.
Any
Again,
unicorns?
different physiology, different genes. You know, there's only 10,000 of them. They
Yeah.
knew they need to do some interbreeding right now. So
Okay.
yeah, there's no restrictions on that front.
Perfect. Shadow corn. I'm in it. I don't even know, maybe 20,000, 30,000 unum. I haven't done anything with it. Should I hold the unum? Should I go for loot boxes? Should I go for shadow corns? And if I do go shadow corns, when reveal?
I mean, my recommendation is you pick up at least one shadow corn egg. I mean, we wanted to do this as a special thing for the community that's here now, as a way for them to participate in effectively this like ongoing PvE feature
Yep.
that really does start with these eggs. So if you're here early and you're in the forest, I recommend at least trying to get one egg, because I think we're going to be I think once we announce what we're doing, it's going to be pretty exciting,
Okay.
because there's a pretty extensible roadmap for these things, a lot of different avenues, and I'm big on like the simplicity of yin and yang, dark and light,
Yep.
right? And I think we've got a lot of really cool plans on that front.
No,
So
I was a big Yu-Gi-Oh guy, so
my
no,
advice
totally.
would be try and get an egg, and then obviously there will be this probably period of time where all the eggs have been minted. We'll shut off the summoning altar, and at that point, you're just collecting unum. And I would just at that point hoard as much unum as you need. We will be revealing unum and RBW breed costs, hopefully late this week, if not early next week. We're just finishing up some simulation modeling on that. Once that occurs, I think you'll get an idea of how much unum you need. And then keep in mind, crafting these other systems also require unum. So my message to the community right now is I would definitely hoard that unum.
Fair. Okay, so go buy a unum. And then the last part is love the hat. When are we gonna get some unicorn merch? I didn't even know Sushi had merch, so maybe that's just like a flex because you know you're in that you're OG-ish into the NFT side now. But when are we gonna get some
No,
unicorn merch?
very, very soon. So
Really?
this is actually from LOL DeFi,
Oh,
LOL DeFi. You can find them on Google. They make some awesome merch for a lot of projects that I support, and they were kind enough to partner with us. So we're going to have a bunch of really sweet swag coming out. I would hope in the next 2 weeks. We were trying to get it live before the public sale. So yeah, there's going to be a bunch
wow,
of
let's
stuff. We'll
go.
be doing a ton of community giveaways via that as well. So a lot of free swag going to be raining down.
Okay, great. Well, hey, Aaron, I really appreciate the time today. Best of luck with Crypto Unicorns, the RBW launch, and then obviously the MVP launching in March. Thank you for the viewers that are hanging out here too. Any last words from your side?
just a thank you to the awesome, wonderful community that we have. And yeah, excited to continue kind of building this in tandem. And anyway, it's going to be a crazy, what is it, 6 weeks? 6 weeks. So I'm excited to get the thing live. That is where I'm at. You want last words from me? It's like fucking ship. That's
Yeah.
where we're at. We are like heads down mode. Let's get the game live and show people what we can do.
Awesome. Well, I think we're all stoked and excited to have another play to earn in the space. So thank you again. And this will be posted onto YouTube. And so hopefully you guys can catch it out there and replay it. And yeah, have a good rest of your day. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thanks a ton.